Hello, my friends of the vinyl community. Tony P. coming at you. From the basement, La Casa de Perla. The Queen is upstairs doing queenly things. She's watching videoed of 90 Day Fiance, where she has Dog Whisperer. I think she has 75 episodes of Dog Whisperer. Whisper, and she tells me, I'll get to him. She's not going to get to him. Hey, the reason why I'm here, this is the second of the videos on Linda Ronstadt's studio albums. I'm going to come back to talk a little bit about them, a sort of a review, a little bit of a deep dive into where she started at once she left the Stone Ponies to up to the orchestral period where she's goes and does some things with the Nelson Riddle Band. So in there, I believe there's 20 studio albums. And if you know that I'm a big fan of Linda Ronstadt, and I promised myself one day I would do this series. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you stick around. I'm not going to go crazy deep dive. I'm going to give you just my take on some of the songs and some of the things that she's done, and maybe give you a little bit of insight into what she was doing and why she did it, and how she got to where she is today. So this is the second studio album. This one's called, I hope you can see that. I'm trying a different angle than what I usually do. Maybe this is a little bit better, a little personable. I'm a little bit more relaxed. So here's the second album. It's called Silk Purse by Linda Ronstadt. This is the back. This album was released on April 13th of 1970. It's recorded in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Cinderella Studios, I believe it was. This is going to be the only album that she will record in Tennessee. But this album, although it's not a commercial success, is very significant to her career, in my opinion. And I'm not a music critic. I just know what I like and know the artists that I like. This album is important, in my humble opinion, because you see the trueness of her voice. I think the first album, and even with the Stone Ponies, she was subdued, she was held back, she was afraid, she wasn't sure. And I think this album gives her the confidence that she needs, boosts her confidence, and propels her into that next step of where am I going to go now? Okay? One of the good things that happened, she gets introduced to a man by the name of Elliot Mazur. Now, Elliot Mazur was a guy who produced Janis Joplin's album Cheap Thrills, and did a fantastic job with Janis Joplin. Janis says to Linda, why don't you talk to Elliot Mazur, let him produce your next album. And Mazur wasn't a slouch. Okay, not only did he do Janis Joplin, he does the likes of Neil Young, he does Frank Sinatra, he does Richie Havens, he does Gordon Lightfoot. Okay, so this guy is no slouch. I think he helped her because Linda and he did the arrangements to the songs, and I think that's where her confidence stemmed from. She's not a songwriter. She even admits that. I do other people's songs, but what she does do, she makes them her own. The only question is what kind of singer does she want to be? She didn't want to be a folk singer. At least that's what she said. The Stone Ponies were more of a folkish band. And she said, well, maybe I want to be a country singer. folk rock, people, is just in its infancy. The whole Laurel Canyon thing is just starting. Okay, and she eventually becomes part of that scene. I think she also lived in Topanga Canyon too. It was the next is the next canyon over. I don't know my California geography, but I'm just guessing. But she becomes part of that, and she's with those people. You know, they're always at the Troubadour playing, and it's the same people. And those people who are at the Troubadour who she runs into and knows, those are going to play a big part in her development. And that's where this album comes in. She says, what the heck? I still think I'm country. So what does she do? If you don't think there's country roots here, boys and girls, you're mistaken. What better way to show a country girl than on a pig farm? Now, I'm not saying every country person owns a pig farm. This is more country than city. Okay? And there she is with Moonbeam McSwain. That's supposedly his name. Okay? They get there and they're not even sure what they're going to call the album. And she jokingly said, why don't we call it, what did she call it? Music from Big Pork. Why don't we call it Music from Big Pork? And they all laughed. They agreed, no, that's a little insensitive. Let's not use that one. She says, okay, let's use Fresh Pork. And that was going to be the title of this. Thank God someone yelled out from the crowd, hey, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, that's what I said. Dun, dun, dun. Silk purse stuck. Thank God. And if you remember, I said that Linda Ronstadt, in her first album, I still think she was afraid to unleash that great voice of hers. And a lot of it has to stem with confidence. This album, I think Elliot Mazur gives her that confidence. You're going to hear the power, the magnitude of her voice. I think it was Lester Bang. You know Lester Bang? Lester Bang is a writer for Rolling Stone magazine. And a little segue here. If you watch Abigail DeVoe's channel, she just did a nice review of the album, the soundtrack from Almost Famous. And she talks about Lester Bang. Lester Bang's character plays a prominent in there. So go see her video on it. I'll put a link down below. But he says this about her. He says her vocal style, this is Linda Ronstadt he's talking about, her vocal style is like her presence. Brimming with passion and vulnerability. And it's I can't pronounce, tumulus, yet possesses of core of absolute strength. That's saying something. So he knows that she has that tool, that musical tool, that instrument, unlike anyone else. Let's take a look at some of the tracks on here. Side one, the first one is the Hank Williams standard, Lovesick Blues. You drop the needle and you hear her voice unleash. It's twangy, it's rough, it's country. You know, it's a Hank Williams tune. You know, he did it, I think he recorded it in 1948. It hits you right in the face as soon as you drop that needle. It's upbeat, it's strong, and she does something that she will do from now to the end of her career. She takes someone else's tune and makes it her own. Whatever little twist, whatever little nuance, what little enunciation that she does and she takes it. Lovesick Blues is no different than that. So she starts off the country song. The second one she starts off with, Are My Thoughts With You? And like typical country songs, you know, they're always about lost love. Are my thoughts with you? Are you thinking about me? Because I am thinking about you. I think Mickey Newberry wrote that song. And you might know Mickey Newberry from Kenny Rogers in the first edition. He's the guy that did I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. Which again is that's another great album too. If you ever get the Kenny Rogers the first editions greatest hits, the one with the tinfoil cover, that's probably one of the greatest sounding records you'll ever hear. And I think it was hot stamped. I'm not sure. But this Mayberry Newberry tune, Mayberry. You're not gonna see Andy Williams there. There's the arrangement that Mazur does and Linda Ronstadt does is so good. It is so well balanced between the gospel choir and Linda's voice. The sadness, you're going to see that too in a lot of her songs, a lot of her albums. There's always that song that is so sad, and the sadness in this song weighs heavy on the listener. And I think you'll hear that in her future albums. She always has that one song that's so very, very sad. And sometimes I think a lot of that came from within with Linda Ronstadt. She even confessed a lot that she was never satisfied with her music. She was her worst critic, and she's a perfectionist at heart. And I think a lot of times that's why a lot of her personal relationships with people, didn't last very long, because she was a perfectionist and she liked doing things her way, which isn't bad, especially if you're an artist. You want things done. You don't want your creativity stifled. And you're going to see that later on when I say she's going to change the way she does things after this album. And again, she was always her harshest critic. Then she goes into one of my favorites, and this is a long-lasting favorite. So the third track on here on side one is the Carole King favorite, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Carole King doesn't record this until a year after Linda Ronstadt does. Okay, again, great arrangement, great mix, the blending, excuse me, of the backup singers is just wonderful. The country, it's almost like a country. She makes this a country tune. The intro is guitar intro is wonderful, but it's country. But something about it, you don't lose your contemporary feel. I love that version. I like Carole King's version too, but beautiful. Fourth track on here is Nobody's, and the guy who pens this is Gary White. Now, Gary White, you might know him from Spooky Tooth. You might know him from Dreamweaver. And this song, it's almost like Linda in a sense. It's someone who puts up a happy front. And everything seems fine on the outside, but sometimes they're sad and lonely on the inside. Now, Linda always wanted a family. Okay, she even went to therapy because that weighed heavy on her mind about having a family. Relationships were tough. I mean, when you're on the road a lot, it's tough to have a relationship that's binding. And you even see now that at the end of her career, her adopting 2 children toward the end of her career, and having that family, I think that helps ease her into the problems medically that she's having now. Again, that's my own opinion. I'm no genius, but that's what I think. And I think she was a little bit sad about that at the end. Side one ends with a song called Louise, and this is sung with Gary White. Now, when I first heard this album, it was not my favorite song. It was not. I hated it. As a matter of fact, I hated it so much I kept saying, "What the hell did they put this song on here for? It's terrible." Gary White, I didn't think it sung very well, and as well as I do, Linda Ronstadt can make anybody. She could sing the phone book and make it sound great. But as I kept listening to this 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, it wore on me. And it was just a wonderful song. Again, a sad song about a death of the lady of the evening, um, who dies young, who's found in her room, and they send her back home in the mail train, on the mail train. So sad, so forlorn, and yet the sadness in that voice, but the simplicity of the song. Two singers and a guitar. Such a great song. And I hated that ding thing at first. That only goes to prove you keep on listening to something like it, you will like it. But that's side one. Great side. They save the best for side two. They save the best for side two. Now, it's the first track, and it's one that propels Linda further into the music scene. The title was Long, Long Time. And I think it's arranged by Norbert Putnam. I don't know who Norbert Putnam was, but I just like his name, so I'm going to give him some kudos. The song was, I think, written by Gary White, also, Long, Long Time. This song is where her voice shines. It's beautiful. The background arrangement. Oh my goodness gracious. Simple. And just so well arranged for her voice along with the background singers. Her voice is sharp. It's strong. And you can tell now she realizes that instrument that she has. And my God, I firmly believe, she says, now I know what I need to do. That song will spend 12 weeks in the Billboard 100s. I think it peaks at 25. It goes to number 20 in the easy listening Billboard 100. That song also gets her nominated for a Grammy. Female vocalist, performance by a female vocalist, I think it is. Unfortunately, she loses out to Billy, Bobby, Skip. Put your hand down, Jim. I know you don't know. You just want to go to the bathroom. Right. She loses to Dionne Warwick in I'll Never Fall in Love Again. Okay. But that's going to be her first Grammy nomination ahead of many. Okay. So that's the pin. That's the song that makes this album. Okay. Second one, she goes to a No Bones, No Excuses country song by Mel Tillis. It's called Mental Revenge. And I don't know. The first time I read this, when I first got this album, I said, Metal Revenge? What metal revenge? It's Mental Revenge. I was a little bit mental with it. But again, she takes the song, makes it her own, makes it more upbeat than Mel Tillis's. I think it's better than the original, and I'm prejudiced. Waylon Jennings goes on to do a version of this song too. What makes this really good country is the fiddle playing in it. I really, really love it. And they do a little trick here, is they take this song and they morph it into the next song on the next track, which is I'm Leaving It Up to You. I'm leaving it up to you. You might remember that if you're as old as I am, from Dick and Grace, about 1963. Beautiful song. You know, Linda, that song was made for her voice. So beautiful. She does it so well. I guess I also got to get kudos to the 1974 version of that song to Donnie and Marie's, because they did a nice one too. Marie was a good singer. Donnie wasn't too shabby himself. Track number 4, He Dark the Sun. What a great song. Now, Linda starts, surrounding herself with some good people, some good writers. That song was written by Gene Clark of the Byrds and Bernie Leadon, who was part of the Eagles, but the Eagles aren't there yet, if you know what I mean. They're not the Eagles yet. They have not flown. They're still in the nest. They're still eggs hatching. Right up top. It's He Dark the Sun propels her voice again into the music scene. It talks about the mistreatment of women. How was she wrong? What did they do to her? You know, that she was so mistreated. Wonderful song. Again, she surrounds herself with talented writers, talented people. She's no dummy. Okay. Last song on this album, I try to figure it out. It's a traditional folk song, and it's called Life is Like a Mountain Railway, featuring the Beechwood Rangers. Now, the song is about life, about the challenges, the courage to face those challenges. You gotta watch for danger and don't give up. How befitting a new singer who's not sure what's ahead of those railroad tracks. But stay the course. Keep your eye on the rail, your hand on the throttle, as the song goes. But that's the song. That's the album. It's not a commercial success. Does okay, but it's not a commercial success. But it leads her to the next realm. What's also interesting, this is recorded in Nashville. She does go and tape a TV show while she's there in Nashville. And you may know who it is. The Johnny Cash Show. So she goes and does that TV show while she's in Nashville. How great is that? Linda Ronstadt. Now, I told you there was changes that was going to be made. Some changes. She felt her manager was stifling her, smothering her, not letting her be as creative as she wanted to be. Her manager at that time was a man by the name of John Boylan. So, she gets rid of John Boylan. She goes back to a man who talked to her earlier in her career and said, if it's meant to be, you'll come around. If you need a new manager, you come and see me. I will manage you. But he didn't want to take her away from anybody. That man was Peter Asher of Peter and Gordon. She seeks out Peter Asher. She says, do you still want to manage me? He says, of course I do. Now, I think what else I should mention here that John Boylan, I think, was one of Linda Ronstadt's earliest boyfriends, too. So I think, her being that perfectionist, her being that person hard to please, I think that didn't help that relationship any, too. But Asher was the right guy at the right place at the right time. Peter Asher worked with the Beatles. He was astute. He was compassionate, trustworthy. Perfect guy for the job. Second thing she also knew, she needed a backup, reliable backup band. In come her friends. Glenn Frey, Bernie Lidden, Randy Meisner, and Don Henley. She was also smart enough to know that these guys were extremely talented. They loved to play the music that she liked to sing, but she also knew that she couldn't keep them for very long. You might know these guys as the Bobby. Jimmy, go ahead. You're right, Jimmy. It was the Eagles. Okay. That lays the groundwork for all of future Linda Ronstadt music. Okay. Now, what was interesting, just a side note, when I was doing research for this, Linda Ronstadt won a Grammy of March 2021 for her documentary, her musical documentary, The Sound of My Voice. She was approached by a group called the Iconic Artists Group, a man by the name of Irving Yazoff, to purchase her catalog, her likeness, and her name. The person that approached Linda Ronstadt was John Boyland and Linda Ronstadt's assistant, Janet Stark. And they talked to her about it, that this would prolong her legacy, make her financially stable, and benefit her music. And I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping it does. So, there you have it. Twice as long as I've ever kept anything on here. So, I hope I can get this downloaded. So, we'll see what happens. All right, my friends. This is Tony P. I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, please give me a like and a subscribe. God bless you. May the force be with you. May all your records be flat. May your stylus run true. Ciao, ciao.